Hello there, everybody. What you are looking at here is a Transport for London staff Oyster card. That's the one in light blue here. And this pass enables the holder to travel for free on any Transport for London service. That's the Tube, DLR, London Overground and buses. And it can be also used on very specific National Rail services. For example, Finsbury Park to Moorgate on Great Northern, Kentish Town to London Bridge on Thameslink, Watford Junction to Euston on London North Western Railway. Those are just some examples. There are others, but the use on National Rail services for this card is very specific. The turquoise card here is a Transport for London staff nominee Oyster card. And this can be offered to one member of the same household as the member of staff. So this person here, this member of staff, would have to live with this person here, the staff nominee. And the staff nominee pass can be used on exactly the same services as the staff pass. Both should be accompanied by a photo card, just in case if stopped by revenue, the holder is able to prove it is their card. Now, the TfL nominee pass has been a long-standing perk for employees of Transport for London, and any attempt to remove them will be met with a strong industrial response, not just from station staff and train operators, but from everybody in the entire organisation. So why am I mentioning this? Well, every now and again, I'll pick up an Evening Standard on my evening commute, and there will be a ridiculous article calling for the abolition of these passes, followed by a load of rubbish about why they should be abolished, with absolutely nobody providing the counter-argument. Well, that is what I'm going to do now. Let's first, however, listen to Conservative London Assembly member and chair of the Police and Crime Committee, Susan Hall, and her opinion on these nominee passes, alongside everybody's favourite concrete farmer, Mike Graham.
I mean, one of the most extraordinary stories I think I've seen, even in the time that you and I have been speaking, was one that I came across yesterday, in which it was revealed that Transport for London gives free travel to something like 54,000 people who claim to be friends and family of TfL staff. I mean, that alone, if they made them pay, would solve the financial crisis they're in.
Right, already I have to stop it because that is a load of drivel. Allow me to explain briefly the reason for TfL's funding crisis. So, TfL was ticking over quite nicely until the pandemic came along, at which point everybody was told to stay home and only travel if absolutely necessary. But TfL did not reduce their services or staffing at all. People from head office were furloughed, but station staff and drivers were not. So you had this ridiculous situation of a largely normal service running throughout London with absolutely nobody boarding these trains. So of course there was no revenue income flowing in. So Transport for London hemorrhaged money, absolutely hemorrhaged money, to the point where they burnt through their reserves and needed bailing out by central government 5 or 6 times. Now, that is not the fault of Transport for London. You have to remember as well that National Rail services ran throughout the pandemic and their losses were indemnified by central government, meaning these National Rail train operators did not make a loss at all because the government props them up happily. But we don't hear about that, but we constantly have to hear about the Transport for London bailouts and the conditions that central government attaches to those bailouts. For example, right now, Transport for London's pension scheme is heavily under attack. That's why the industrial dispute between the RMT and ASLEF and Transport for London is ongoing. Because it looks like, as part of the bailout packages, workers have to pay the price. On top of that, what Mike Graham says here is absolutely absurd. If the people handed staff nominee passes were forced to pay for them, it would solve TfL's funding crisis. But of course that's not true, because if I'm handed something for free, the assumption shouldn't be that I would have bought that thing in the first place. Let's say, for example, at Christmas, I get a new jacket. I don't unwrap it and go, oh, I was going to get that anyway. Or I don't unwrap a new pair of shoes and go, oh, I was going to get them anyway. So he's making the truly ridiculous assumption that everybody handed one of these nominee passes is using it to its maximum, as in travelling to Watford Junction from Zone 1, travelling to Upminster from Zone 1, whenever they feel like. It's simply not true. A lot of these cards are lying dormant. A lot of these nominee cards are rarely used. The occasional bus journey now and again, which is what, £1.70. It beg a belief that this need explaining, but if he thinks that 54,000 people who have these nominee passes would otherwise pay the full price of a London Zone 1 to 9 travel card, or whatever the hell it is, he is completely stupid.
Yes, well, I've been bringing this up with TfL for, as long as I've been on the Assembly. Yeah. And they say it costs them absolutely nothing. I mean, you couldn't make it up. They say because they don't have to put on any more trains to accommodate these people or anything else, therefore it doesn't cost any money. What about the loss of revenue?
Well, right.
For need to travel, they would be paying if they didn't get these free passes. And it's very annoying. TfL have given them to extra people now.
So TfL have given these to extra people now, she says. I don't know what the hell she's talking about. I haven't heard of an expansion of the nominee Oyster card criteria. I think what she's talking about is Transport for London have now offered free travel to subcontracted cleaners, the lowest paid people in the entire organisation. God forbid.
I just think it's all right for people that work for TfL to get a pass as a perk, but not for anybody that they live with. I mean, it's just...
Well, it's worse than that.
It's not anybody they live with. It's one person that they live with.
According to a story I read yesterday, more than 19,000 people have been nominated by TfL members of staff, more than 21,000 have been nominated by bus drivers, more than 10,000 friends or relatives of retired TfL staff, and 3,300 people who know third-party workers. So, you know, I know you, if you've got a friend that works at TfL, I can travel for free, apparently.
Another completely outrageous lie here. What Transport for London actually mean by third-party operators or third-party workers is Elizabeth Line employees, because the Elizabeth Line is under the Transport for London umbrella, but it is operated by a company called MTR, and MTR hire their employees separately, but because it's under the Transport for London umbrella, those employees are entitled to both a staff pass and a nominee pass. So it's not as he describes, oh, you know someone who's a third party who knows someone who works for TfL, so I can get free travel. I mean, Jesus Christ. What an absolute slug.
Yep. Well, I think there's a thing that you have to live with that person, but we've got so many house shares going on in London.
Yeah, how are they going to check?
Well, I don't know. And I actually asked once how much they were used, and the commissioner said that they didn't have a way of checking how many journeys were used by these passes.
I mean, what it is shows it's just more profligacy with public money, isn't it? If it's not your money, you don't care.
Yes, that's right. I'm afraid that is rife everywhere. If everybody ran their businesses or public bodies as if it were their own, as if it were their own money, we'd see a damn change, I tell you. That.
Ah, yes. Isn't it sweet to witness a Tory in the wild calling for austerity measures within public bodies? Of course, what she just said is the antithesis of what public transport stands for. If Transport for London was run in that way, with Ebenezer Scrooge acting as commissioner, can you imagine the amount of bus services they would deem to be unprofitable and would be cut as a result? The whole point of public transport is it is there when we need it, even if it is making a loss. And the full operation of TfL services during COVID is perhaps the finest example of that. It remained operational for those who needed it at the expense of its own finances. And now staff are being forced to foot the bill through their pensions. Inexcusable. Imagine being this way, just witnessing everything through the veil of money. There's just constantly money bags over our eyes. So to summarise, what these two airheads don't realise, there will be no movement to abolish staff passes and nominee passes within Transport for London, because absolutely everyone within Transport for London is entitled to one. So where would that movement stem from? That's point number one. And point number two is, if there were a movement, let's say from the Conservative members of the Greater London Assembly, it would be met with industrial action by the RMT, by ASLEF, by TESA, and the amount cost to Transport for London from 1 or 2 day of strikes would completely negate the alleged cost that Mike Graham has got in his head of these nominee passes, even though he's vastly overestimating their usage. But 1 or 2 days of industrial action would wipe out the value of these nominee passes, so it's simply not worth going down that route. But again, try explaining this to these two, who just think it's as simple as, we should just take it off them then. Just take it off them. So ultimately, this is just another example of a pair of Tories displaying their disdain for workers, their disdain for workers having any perks at work, their disdain for public services, their disdain for public transport, their disdain for anything that doesn't make vast amount of profit that they can ship off to shareholders. Remember, this woman is the chair of the Police and Crime Committee in the London Assembly. She was on Mike Graham's programme for a while here, and she had a pop at Transport for London. She had a pop at Transport for London workers, but she didn't mention the fare evasion epidemic that is currently taking place within London. That is the real cost of lost revenue within Transport for London, not a few people having staff passes. Fare evasion is through the roof. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.